and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis the 13th, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day peppering America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose a big holes at the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bought your great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa, thanks baby you made me a billion, plus I own a building for each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. And tonight we are talking about the Obama legacy. And you can imagine how this show is going to go down. But let me do a little bit of a recap of exactly what we're going to highlight. And essentially, this Obama administration over the last 8 years has been a continuation of the Bush administration, the Clinton administration before him. And we just continue to the same imperialist policies, the same fascist bullshit that we had for years prior to that. And people are revering this man and talk about him like he's this revolutionary and that he did so much stuff for the people of the United States. But let's realize that him and his family have lived at the White House for the last 8 years with our taxpayer dollars. And what has Barack Obama done is just taken the orders of the people that are really in charge of this country. Barack Obama, who just 10 years ago was not even really a well-known name inside the United States, kind of had somewhat of an effect of a Bernie Sanders or maybe even a Donald Trump when he ran in 2008, and that he was somewhat of an unknown candidate, and there was a lot of hope that he would be different. I kind of remember that feeling that, maybe this guy's be different than any president we've ever seen before. Maybe this is the time that America makes some big steps forward towards real progress, and maybe perhaps this is when we finally tell the bankers to fuck off, That seemed to have been kind of the attitude in 2008 with the people. And then almost immediately Barack Obama slashed those dreams of those people when he bailed out those banks in 2009. Now we're in the last few days of the Obama administration. It's been a wild ride. We've had Gaddafi was killed. We almost went to war with Syria. We went to war with Yemen. We funded neo-Nazis in Ukraine. We have pushed Venezuela to the brink. We've created this atmosphere of tension towards Mexico. We've ended up on the wrong side of the Russia-United States new fallout, and much, much more. Let's look at one specific thing is now that this is what's happened right now with our own border, that this new environment has been fermented of now that the idea of the wall is actually seems like a good solution to a lot of people inside the United States. And, people talk about Barack Obama as such as pro-immigration president, but let's remember he deported more people than any president in the history of the United States. Barack Obama ultimately just continued a immigration policy that its flaw is that we don't allow people in legal ways in this country, but we allow an illegal way to this country that ultimately kills us as taxpayers, because we allow a bunch of people that are off the system, don't pay taxes. But the most important thing is that the corporations, they use them to pay them under minimum wage, which kills a lot of jobs because they can just go to them or go to us, the legal working citizens of America. And it's ultimately a major job killing thing. Whether you like to acknowledge that or not, that's what illegal immigration does. That's why we should have a simple way to legal immigration, workers' visas, easily attainable. It doesn't necessarily make them a citizen, so it doesn't, and and they're not illegal, but they'll be on the books. Of course, there's just one small problem, this whole litany of problems that are now taking place in our country. However, I believe that's one simple fix. However, Barack Obama continued this half-ass effort at the border, where they have this weak border patrol force that ultimately they hunt down some people. They end up putting them in jail for the night, and then they send them back. For them, maybe they try to come back later. And then ones inside this country, after they've already practically made a new life for themselves, to deport them back. So it's a flawed policy for people that are the taxpayer, for the people that are actually the illegal immigrants themselves, is remember that they're humans as well. And the policy that's done now a lot of times splits up families to the deportation policy. Rather than having a proactive solution, it's a reactive solution. Is that now they're already here, let's try to hunt them down and send them back, rather than how about we just cut it at the root and help them come here legally. That way there is no problem. But it's one of the major things, and one of the major misconceptions about the Obama legacy is that people think that he was going to be one of the most pro-immigration presidents ever. He's been one of the most anti-immigration presidents ever when it comes to the statistical deportations have happened. And let's remember, how has the immigration problem even ballooned up to the problem that it is now? Why is illegal immigration such a problem inside the United States? What's one of the roots of it? And that is the fact that in Mexico, the United States is financing these drug cartels that are murderous, wiping out big portions of cities in North Mexico, and have caused a major problem all throughout the country. They've been armed by the United States, and with Operation Fast and Furious, this became very evident and no longer a conspiracy theory. And just look at this is another thing of the Obama administration. One of the many scandals that's gripped the administration was that, but it was quickly silenced by the media, and we ended up focusing on other stuff during the Obama administration. For example, like gay marriage was one of the big issues of the Obama administration, or another one was, of course, immigration. But these silly debates that go on inside of our media, this is what I think a lot of the Obama administration is going to be remembered for, is the fact that the media had became such propagandized, I guess you could say, compared to, it feels like any real debate was gone. You had the gutting of any last reporters that didn't fit the agenda. From MSNBC, we see in MSNBC go in the last 15 years from, some actually decent hosts used to exist there. For example, like Dylan Ratigan. And then it gets eventually turned into Al Sharpton, Rachel Maddow, just ultimately these Democratic Party hacks that have taken over this network. And on Fox News, they continue to play their part, which is to play the Republican side of this Democratic Republican Party paradigm. And then you have CNN, which just plays like the middle of the road people, for general America. And they don't really play. Even right now, they've played a lot of, leaning towards the Democratic Party. But generally, they play center in this whole game. And that's your that right there is your little that's how the media works, is that they make it seem like there's a big variety of opinions, but it's all ultimately the same opinion with any issues that really matter. On anything, when it comes to the NADA, to Guantanamo Bay, they all seem to be in accord with that. Generally, they support the continuation of the status quo, the corporate fascist state that's emerging in this country, and you have the continuation of indefinite detention, wiretapping, and the continued crushing of our civil liberties inside this country. What we've seen with the Obama administration, however, is a very quick, the real naiveness of the conservatives in this country was displayed. Because in 2009, when Obama was inaugurated, they were talking about how big government was going to destroy us, how the Obama administration was going to destroy us with with the expansion of the surveillance state and whatnot. And now that Donald Trump is talking about doing just all these same things, but as a Republican in 2016, 2017, we're hearing all these people change their tunes and talk about how Donald Trump's going to save us with all these things. And again, you can say that on the flip side, it showed also the Democrats' naiveness, is that they believed all this stuff that Obama was going to fix this country was this, and this, and with these promises. Now Trump pretty much does these same promises, may rewards them a little bit in 2016, 2017, and they think he's going to destroy our country with those things. I mean, even, for example, talk about a wall, something that their own, that a lot of these naive Democrats, one of the people that they at least settled with, I don't think that a lot of Democrats really looked up to her, but Hillary. Let's talk about the border fence 10 years ago. So it's definitely nothing new, the idea of this border wall, which is the most stupidest solution to immigration. If you actually believe a wall is the answer, you really need to reevaluate your look on history. I mean, it's like Jesse Ventura said, that more likely than not, when walls are built, it's not really to keep people out, it's to keep people in. And if that wall is built and they're living, I remember one time the Trump candidacy, they were talking about building a wall on the northern border. So we'd be walled in, like, we're in East Germany or something like that. So actually, you could say also, well, they were walled in as well. It was actually really West Berlin was walled in. So, East Germany is often the ones though that we think of the extreme surveillance state or whatnot with Stasi, and that's kind of like with the NSA today. The NSA has become a draconian measure of the paranoia of people, and they support the government's crushing of the people because they believe that with their paranoia that we're under constant threat from terrorists. However, I would say that it's general. Is that the whole terrorist bait is so over exaggerated. Is that the amount of terrorist attacks? Because so many of them have been false flags, a lot of the major ones, and then smaller ones. It's very unlikely. You're more likely to be killed by your own government, to be killed by terrorists. However, a couple things always come to mind when talk about terrorists. Is it feels like if there was an actual real problem with terrorism, that there's a couple of simple solutions that would eliminate a lot of any threat from terrorists. And it seems like they allow, for example, come on, the TSA talks about how your water bottle could be a bomb or whatever, and then they throw in the trash can in a heavily populated area of the airport where you got all these people hanging around. It's obviously not about that. It's more just to make you buy the airplane, to buy the airliner shit, buy the airplane shit. Also, I feel like one major thing that, of course, we could do is just that if we had a policy of having an air marshal on every flight, I feel like that would eliminate a lot of fear. As it might seem a little bit authoritarian, but I think that would just be pragmatic. You have one guy, and you don't know who he is. He has the gun. He has the skills to take out whatever possible threat that's on the plane. So I think that's one thing that obviously could be done. Another thing that we could do is stop fucking bombing all these Middle Eastern countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, whatnot. Because there might be a terrorist problem now, but there wasn't so much before we started bombing these countries. The thing is that when you bomb people, they're going to tend to hate you, and we've bombed all these countries, and we've killed 1.8 million people over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've killed 1.8 million people in Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States military. They've killed 1.8 million people in Iraq. Afghanistan, they've killed a few 100,000, I think. There was more intense fighting, I think, in Iraq. We had battles like Fallujah over there that killed tens of thousands of people with white phosphorus. White phosphorus being a chemical weapon. These are blatant breaking of the Geneva Conventions. And this terrible policy in Iraq continued into the Obama administration. And even though they're going to try to credit Obama as the man who ended the Iraq War, the Iraq War is still going on. People are still getting deployed to it. The Afghanistan war is still going on. People are being deployed to it. Now we have the breaking opening of a war in Syria that's going to be worse than the war in Iraq. And it's going to push towards the war in Iran that's going to be 15 times worse than the war in Iraq. Obama has created more tensions with Russia. And now we're practically found ourselves, this major fallout where they're bringing back this McCarthyist propaganda of the commies, and they're gonna invade the United States. Russia's no longer communist, and in many ways, the United States more resembles the old Soviet Union than modern day Russia resembles the old Soviet Union. With our censoring of information and flipping of truth, it seems like more resembles at least what was the myth of the Soviet Union in Hollywood, but I think it was the reality. Is that it's definitely that there's things that do parallel between the United States and the Soviet Union, but nowadays they're pushing this idea like Russia is back to the old days of the Soviet Union, and one of the major things they've used against Russia is that they try to say that Russia is bigoted and doesn't treat their gays well. But let's remember there's 10 states in the United States that have homosexuality illegal. I know it's technical and probably not enforced, but that's the truth. Another thing about the United States is that the United States is the only country, I think, that could back countries that kill gays and still be claiming that they represent the rights of gays worldwide. So I think that the extreme hypocrisy shows there. And God, you had the candidate Hillary Clinton that took tons of money from Saudi Arabia, talk about comments made by Trump that were kind of homophobic, and she took so much money from Saudi Arabia, a country that kills gays. The extreme hypocrisy is so wide open that it's so easy to criticize it. Hillary Clinton's hypocrisy, the United States establishment's hypocrisy, and when it comes to Russia, of course, it's overly exaggerated that the supposed repression on the gays in Russia. In fact, there's no law that bans homosexuality in Russia. There's no the only thing is they ban gay parades. Russia has moved very forward in a lot of things, and Russia actually has you actually have a man of a different religion is their defense minister, different from the majority of Russians, is that Sergei Shoigu is a Buddhist who is the head of the Ministry of Defense inside of Russia. You have definitely some diversity inside the Putin government, and I think that Putin, moving forward, I think he's going to definitely be taking this very cautiously as they go from, of course, just one corporate spokesman in America to another. I think Putin knows this, and he's kind of acknowledged it. That he's not really that excited about Trump, and Trump seems to be wavering his tone from a little bit. He went from, I was like, oh yeah, Russia's definitely a decent country, and they're fighting terrorism. Now more to it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get along with Russia. It's definitely, we got to be cautious. I think that the tone's going to waver, and I think eventually we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about the continuation of this Cold War, because I don't see a drastic change in the policy when America will still be pushing strong sanctions against most of Russia's allies. When it comes to Iran, Venezuela, the policies don't change with them, but apparently there's supposed to be this change between the United States and Russia. It's not going to work out. As Putin and Trump are supposed to have some kind of summit in a few weeks when Trump officially becomes the president. Trump also, he officially becomes the president Friday. So this is the last weekend that's come to an end of the Obama administration. And right now you see the History Channel, you see the mainstream media trying to glorify his presidency, and there's people, even trying to say that he was one of the best presidents in history. To talk about the debt that happened in this country skyrocketed from I think 6.9 trillion. No, it wasn't 6.9 trillion. It was like 13 trillion to 20 trillion this presidency, something like that. So there's many things, of course, indicators, just all kinds of things that would indicate that he wasn't one of the best presidents. And obviously, I think that the Obama administration was just a continuation of the status quo. And you could say, it's like the George W. Obama statement. That's what it was, a continuation of George W. Bush's policies, and revamped many of them. Now the wars in the Middle East are no longer just Iraq and Afghanistan, but all across the Middle East. Bush went to war in 3 different countries, and Obama went to war in 7 different countries. And now I think that soon Russia will be it's moving towards a showdown with them in one of the next presidencies. I think that Iran definitely will happen under Donald Trump, and with his tough rhetoric on Iran, I could see definitely the pushing towards war with Iran. Especially, I think Iran's not going to play into the United States imperialist playbook anymore. They're not going to sign anything like the Iran deal, especially if they change their president to a more hardliner. Right now, they have kind of a moderate Rouhani, but the presidential elections there are just in a few months. One thing that's also very interesting is that the potential of Western Europe starting to move away from the American sphere of influence under the Trump presidency, as we have the upcoming election with potentially of Marine Le Pen in France, who has stated she doesn't really want to be part of the United States circle anymore, and she wants to more look towards Russia. I don't think that's going to go well with Trump, even though that there's a lot of comparisons that are drawn up between Trump and Le Pen. I don't think that Trump's going to be allowed to make an alliance with Le Pen, and I think Le Pen is ultimately going to become an enemy of the United States, and France is going to become an enemy of the United States. And also Spain, there's a potential that they might move towards a populist people movement, Podemos, and they would move away from the United States sphere of influence. So I think that it's ultimately going to strengthen the United Kingdom, United States alliance, as they're going to be trying to counter a potential French-Danish alliance, as a lot of Western Europe might be starting to move away from the United States. And I think a lot of people in Germany want Germany to move away from the American sphere. However, there's no real party that represents that, because even the AfD is ultimately still backers of Israel, and they still back the European Union. So Germany is a little bit of a pickle in that regard. And also Merkel has a pretty sizable base still, despite her many flaws and despite a very corrupt administration. So I could see Merkel potentially still being the chancellor after this year. And I said this tensions that are happening with Russia. This is a Cold War. We're in a new Cold War. I'd say that new Cold War started in 2012 when that meeting happened between Putin and Obama. Putin understands that the United States can't be trusted. They're ultimately owned by the Rothschilds and the big corporations. So I don't think Putin was really disappointed by Obama, because I think he knew what to expect. I don't think that Putin really was shocked by the deterioration of the relations, because it was already happening prior to that. I mean, really, with the 2008 war, when Bush was still president, that was a major blow to the American and Russian relations when Russia fought NATO-backed Georgia. And I would say as well, another thing that was a major turning point was the stance during the 2000s between the United States and Russia on North Korea's nuclear missiles. Russia was more supportive of their nuclear missiles, and the United States takes a very staunch opinion against North Korea. Remember, Russia and North Korea have a kind of a loose alliance with each other. It's kind of gotten a little bit shaky in the last few years. I think in the 2000s almost they had better relations than they do now. But it definitely does exist. There is an alliance, and I believe at one point they did some kind of military training exercise together. The North Koreans and Russia does have a border. It's kind of loosely protected. There's definitely a more friendly than not friendly atmosphere between the two. And of course, like I said, is that you have these people that Trump is so against, and they're apparently, however, Trump is going to establish good relations with Russia, despite being against almost all of Russia's allies. Almost all of Russia's allies are what you could say American enemies: North Korea, Iran, Syria, Cuba, Venezuela. Those are some of the big ones that all Trump, I think, has made a statement about at one point or the other, considering them enemies. Even Assad, that he talked about the Syrian rebels and how we shouldn't finance them because we don't know who they are. However, I think he's made a bad statement about Assad before, and Trump's very interesting because he had before business relations, at least what they allege, between the Cuban government, or they say that he broke through the embargo, and they say that he also had business relations in Libya with Gaddafi. He rented a room Gaddafi, which doesn't really say anything about one's political alliance, because one rented a room to a man, and I know obviously that the man's not supportive of Green Libya's politics or anything like that. But I find it interesting that a man with this history is going to be the one that's going to later push for wars against these countries and try to make it seem like that he is the most loyal American or whatever, and this distorted view of what it means to be an American or a patriot. Trump is apparently the most superior at it. Trump acts like he's this ultra patriot. He tries to act like that he's spent a lot of his life helping Americans. But let's remember that the man has shipped a lot of jobs away from the United States. The man has ultimately, he's a guy who's done massive tax write-offs. He's no different than any billionaire. He's not this special billionaire. He's not Batman or something like that. He's Donald Trump. And I think people get this distorted view, and even these people that are awake, that they want to believe that Trump will be different. They want to believe that Trump's going to be this man that's going to save America. but he's not. I don't see Trump. I don't see Trump differing from the elite's plans, and I see Trump just being a continuation. And look at who he's cozied up with: Henry Kissinger. How many administrations has Henry Kissinger been involved with? Now it's been all the way back to Nixon. I think he went all the way back to LBJ. So you have this guy that's been involved since LBJ. Now is now going to be helping with decide the United States foreign policy. The man that bombed populated North Vietnamese neighborhoods, the man that ordered the sarin gas to be used in Vietnam, the man that ordered the coup to happen in September 11th, 1973 in Chile. This man is responsible for so many war crimes and atrocities that's going to help draft the United States foreign policy for Donald Trump. Henry Kissinger is such a piece of shit, and the fact that they try to make it seem like in the media that he was this guy of somewhat of peace, that he somehow got us with peace of Vietnam, bull fucking shit. What happened, what Kissinger did was bomb them so severely, commit horrible atrocities, that the Vietnamese were practically backed into a corner and sat down at the negotiation table. And then anyways, ultimately the Vietnamese won. In the end, they got their land back, rightfully so. In the country, Kissinger was disgusting. So like I was saying, is that I don't see what some people see in Donald Trump. I don't see like a JFK type figure. I don't see a man with that kind of integrity or that kind of honor. Donald Trump is again, he's a person that has just thought about himself and just is a billionaire like any of the other billionaires. There was even this talk at one point, of a Trump-Cuban presidency, that Mark Cuban was going to be on this ticket. And then later Mark Cuban kind of ended up going against Trump. But Mark Cuban and Donald Trump on a ticket would have absolutely resembled the oligarchy of the United States. And how are they any different than any other billionaires? It's because they're somewhat cool, and I put cool in quotations. I don't think they're cool, but because they kind of act a little bit more like normal people compared to maybe the other more stuffy billionaires that are up there. Mark Cuban, Donald Trump, kind of act a little bit more like, normal people. And I think that's how Trump was able to get so much support of the United States, because he kind of acts like a middle-class dude, even though he's so fucking far from a middle-class dude. The guy has billions of dollars. Again, Donald Trump, it kind of goes back to the effect of Barack Obama. And yes, I'll make the comparison. Is that Barack Obama and Donald Trump share one thing, is that they were both seen as outsiders when they came into the presidency, but I'll tell you, by the time that Trump is done with his presidency, he'll be seen as just another one of them. Is that Obama and Trump, they both came out of nowhere, it seemed like, during the campaign cycle. Back in June 2015, no one really thought that Trump was going to win. Nobody even really thought that that Trump would maybe get to the point of the primaries. They thought he'd probably just drop out, at some point in 2015. But then slowly, Rick Perry and Santorum and, some of the outsider candidates started falling out, the outsiders, some of the ones with a very low poll support. And Trump started surging in the polls. And then all, at first the talk was, maybe Bush, Rubio. I predicted Rubio to get to the end. And I had that prediction all the way into 2016. I did not think that Donald Trump would get very far. And then it went, the talk was maybe Rubio, Bush, or maybe possibly even, Huckabee. I don't know. That seemed more reasonable than saying Donald Trump in 2016. And it started changing. It was like, Trump has a decent lead, but probably Cruz or Rubio is probably going to ended up pulling up in front. As we got into February, it started being like, well, probably Cruz is probably going to sneak in at some point, or Rubio still has somewhat of a shot. And then started coming March, April, was like, yeah, Trump's probably going to close out this nomination. And then it really came down to about 3 candidates during the 2016 election. We had Clinton, Sanders, and then Trump. And Trump ended up closing out that primary in May. And then we had Clinton, Sanders, and then this is one thing that I think a lot of Americans finally realized the nature of the rigged elections, is that they saw their candidate, Bernie Sanders, get the nomination ripped out of his hands, and then ultimately this guy sold out to Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton won, even despite the fact that the people said Bernie. And I'll tell you one thing, is that there was not really Hillary Clinton supporters prior to Bernie losing the nomination. I would say that about 65% of Democrats prior to Hillary winning that nomination were Bernie Sanders supporters, and he just dominated the internet. His popularity was humongous. However, I don't think he fit the game. What I mean by that is I don't think that he fit the agenda of what they wanted to push during the next few months, which is all this great division that they're able to make. And I think that the thing is that when you have the Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump really pushed this great division, in the great division between social justice warriors and the alt-right. And by using these two groups, these two subversive groups, they're able to tear apart the fabrics of the United States. And by using people of the pseudo-left and using people of the right wing, of these, people that are say a bunch of neo-Nazi shit, but are not neo-Nazis, the alt-right, they were able to really create some severe division in this country. And I say it really what the social justice warriors, they were used as tools, and so were the alt-right. And now we have a very divided country going into a Trump administration, and that really signifies that it was the last step, wasn't it, of a very divisive era for America. In the last 8 years, I think this country, the average Americans, have become so divided. It's kind of ridiculous. We've ended up all Americans have now seem to the hatred for the other side has definitely went up, and this fake other side, because it's not really another side, between ultimately the corporate fascists still run both shows, the alt-right and the social justice warriors. They run both sides, the alt-right and the social justice warriors. And they got people, you got these clowns like Milo Yiannopoulos on the alt-right, and then you have these people over on the social justice warriors like the Cenk Uygur and others, and you saw like that, tension and that divisiveness blow over at the RNC, and you had Cenk Uygur and Alex Jones, get against like an altercation, and it really kind of symbolized America, falling for they're falling these clowns to their own demise, to their own division. But yes, the social justice warriors, the corporate fascists run both shows, the social justice warriors and all right, and they're going to keep people distracted as the plundering of this country continues by the Zionist lobby. Let's not forget about the Zionists, and is that it's still both sides will say that it's politically incorrect to talk about them. You have a lot of people like Breitbart who they will talk about all this white supremacist bullshit, but they support Israel. It's kind of a difference between, your traditional neo-Nazis and, the alt-right is that the traditional neo-Nazis don't support Israel, but the alt-right does. And now you have people that seem to hate Muslims, blacks, Hispanics, but they don't hate Israel. And it goes along with their own agenda, doesn't it? Because Israel is a racist state and has apartheid like they had in South Africa. And they hate Arabs and they hate Africans, so it's to no surprise that their own little sideshow, this little offshoot, this little distraction is also is also racist like them. And I don't think I'm using that word unjustly. Is that, yeah, definitely if you look at the bullshit that's put on Breitbart and stuff like that, it's stuff that defends the Zionist state and at the same time creates division inside this country. And the same goes to Young Turks and the people at people like Star, who try to make it seem like that the people that have guns and are critical of Obama and whatnot. They try to make it seem like they're the problem with America. They try to make it seem like that the patriots are what's wrong with America. You know, it's like the enemy of the alt-right would be Black Lives Matter, and then the enemy of the social justice warriors would be the Patriot movement. A lot of people in both these movements have the same goal, which is to establish this establishment and fight back against the injustice and corruption inside this government. However, they've kept them divided with media and lies about each other. You know, that the Patriots believe this about Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter believes this about the Patriots. But really, despite how different they seem, they're not that different. Now, there might be definitely people in Black Lives Matter that are paid off by George Soros or whatnot. But a lot of the people protesting in Ferguson, a lot of the people protesting in Baltimore are just mad at this corporate fascist state and what it's done to a lot of people in the inner cities, and they're going to the streets to express that. And the Patriot movement, you know, what happened at the Oregon Ranch last year was these people tired of their way of life being trampled on by the government. So, you know, you have these occupiers, which they were called, you know, all kinds of things like terrorists and stuff like that, especially by the social justice warriors. And you had the alt-right, you had the alt-right calling Black Lives Matter terrorists, and you have all these people saying the Black Lives Matter should be labeled terrorist groups or whatnot, based on the actions of a few of them, which were very unfortunate. You know, it's like I can't support people that block ambulances by blocking freeways or whatnot, but people that are, you know, mad and are calling for the police to be held accountable, the police officers to be held accountable for the innocent people they shoot. That's a different story. And people make it seem like it's wrong that they are protesting in Ferguson, but you know, the story that we were told doesn't seem right. That this man was shot over $1, and that he supposedly was charging the police officer, even though the evidence said that he wasn't charging the police officer, and they left him in the street, his dead body, for hours after he was shot. The whole story does not sound right, and to anyone that's not, you know, seeing things through the police enforcer apologist, you know, glasses, you know, is that there's certain people online, they just want to believe that our police are good no matter what, or they'll say it's a hard job, you have to understand. No, I don't have to understand, because that's the thing, it is a hard job, and some people aren't cut for it. And if you're trigger happy and you can't handle a situation without shooting them, if there's any aggression, yeah, then you're not cut out to be a police officer. That's the thing. People talk about, well, I would have done that or whatever. Well, you're not a fucking police officer, so who gives a shit? But the thing is that you're not cut out to be a police officer, but our police should definitely be trained well enough where they can handle a lot of situations without using their gun. And I'm not saying every situation. There's definitely some situations where they, are going to need to use force. However, you look at, for example, European police, and they don't seem to have a lot of the same problems that we do, where we have so many citizens get killed by police every year. And a lot of these incidents, they had really no justification. I mean, you hear these stories of, I got scared. See, that should not be something that comes up. Is that they got scared over something that, and it wasn't like that they had a gun and they got scared and shot. No, it was just that I got scared because of their size. I got scared because they were looking at me funny. No, that should not happen. And some people will say that the Obama administration led to more police officers being killed than any other administration. But during the Obama administration, we only had we've actually are having less police deaths than ever. There's no war on police. Trump is talking about this war on police that's non-existent, and the police unions back them. To no surprise, is that Donald Trump seems to be this extreme police defender. That it seems that he has almost like the stance of that because there are boys in blue, they can't do anything wrong. It's kind of an outdated mentality that we would think would be gone by now. So maybe back in the day when a lot of this stuff wasn't as known, people would have this opinion. But nowadays, people know about the police brutality. They know about the officer shootings. They know about these horrible stories like Tamir Rice, who shot because he had a BB gun. Just countless stories that have happened over the last few years. And, Obama has remained kind of silent on a lot of these issues. Is that it never didn't take any major steps to fix some of these issues in some of these departments where this happened. Barack Obama will be known for that, is that he talked about how he was trying to improve the black communities, and then, one of the major things that affected the black communities was the officer shootings, and he didn't do much about it. He also didn't do, and it led to rioting and much other things. It wasn't like there was like just the shooting happened. There was other side effects from it. And another thing, of course, that Obama's going to be remembered for is that Detroit and other cities crumbling. Chicago, we have over 2,000, or was it over? Over 2,000 murders, and what was it? It was over 500 murders in 1 year in Chicago. But no, you don't hear about. You don't hear Obama talk about that. And you don't see him doing anything to try to fix those problems. And that's supposed to be his hometown, Chicago. And Chicago's in a worse state than ever. You have Rahm Emanuel, the dual American Israeli citizen, and you see what he's responsible for, and what his city's been involved with. But it's like what ultimately Rahm Emanuel says, that don't let a good crisis go wasted. Is that Rahm Emanuel has been one of the major pushes for gun control, and you see a city with major gun control, and it's resulted in what you see there. It's resulted in a city that has so many murders. And in cities that have a lot of guns, they seem to have less murders statistically. And now thinking back about the Cuban is that apparently Trump broke through what they allege is that he broke through the Cuban embargo, whatever, to do business with them. And I was thinking that, well, Trump is probably also – I think that's going to be one major thing we're going to see in the next couple months is I think Trump is going to potentially close off relations between Cuba and the United States when he becomes president. And I think that's going to signal a push towards stricter relations with them. And I think that there's going to be more sanctions against Cuba, more aggressive actions towards Cuba. I think you're going to see a return back to the policies of a while ago. I don't think the supposed opening up is going to continue. The opening up is the United States to Cuba, because Cuba's opened its door to us for a long time, but the United States has frozen them with sanctions, and we had the embargo. We have the embargoes for all these years, and people say, well, it's because we need to stomp out, communist oppression. But what the embargo has done is denied a lot of people inside of Cuba of the medicine they need. It's caused a lot of problems for the people of Cuba. But with their good leadership, I think is the reason why they've been even able to survive the embargo. A very crippling economic measure that they levied on this country for 50-something years. Cuba also has been known for a lot of years that they really had the villain image attached to Cuba with Fidel Castro, and now Trump is the first president to be without Fidel Castro. And Fidel Castro dying in November. That's one of the last historic events that happened before Fidel Castro's death was Donald Trump's election. So now Donald Trump is going into a presidency where there is no Fidel in Cuba, but there's still Raul. But Raul's actually nearing his retirement. So actually he's going to witness the transferring of power from the Castros to the younger part of the Communist Party of Cuba in 2018, when Miguel Diaz-Canel is expected to become the successor of the Cuban government, and the Communist Party of Cuba will go on to a new step. Miguel Diaz-Canel is actually younger than the revolution itself. Well, you have Raul Castro currently in charge, who was a fighter in the Cuban Revolution, and his brother, when he was in charge, was the leader of the Cuban Revolution. So it's went from that to now it's going to a younger generation. I could say definitely expect definitely a unpredictable policy towards Latin America. Also towards Venezuela, Donald Trump's talked a lot of smack about the Bolivarian Revolution inside of Venezuela. I can imagine that Trump is going to probably get in bed with some of the more right-wing extremist elements. He's going to get closer. He's going to get tighter with some of the more right-wing extremist elements in South America, including Álvaro Uribe, who Álvaro Uribe thanked Donald Trump after he was elected. Álvaro Uribe is the leader of the far right in Colombia, used to be the president in the 2000s. Álvaro Uribe was real cozy with George Bush, and Álvaro Uribe is also very anti-Venezuelan. And I can imagine is that if one of his allies, potentially Zalunga, becomes the president of Colombia in 2018, that Donald Trump is going to heavily exploit that in order to destabilize Venezuela. However, potentially Colombia could also go to a left-wing candidate like Robledo, and I can imagine that Trump will be kind of in a pickle trying to pick a country to base the sabotage from if Colombia is not there. Colombia also has a military base from the United States there. There is Peru that's now pro-American. There is Brazil that's now pro-American. So probably and Argentina. But, when it comes to, northern South America, northwestern South America, Colombia is kind of like where they've used that country to kind of base the right-wing counter-influence to the leftist revolution the last 20 years. It's almost been 20 years since this really kicked off with the election of Hugo Chavez in 1998. And it doesn't look like Maduro is going to leave anytime soon, if Maduro does leave, it's going to go to the vice president. So the Bolivarian revolution looks like it's going to continue to at least 2019. And then with the election, I think that despite a lot of discontent with Maduro, is that they'd rather have the PSUV than somebody from the opposition or Henrique Capriles, who the Venezuelans simply do not trust. And rightfully so. Enrique Capriles is a snake. He's a person that has a lot of ties to outside of the country, and I think that the Venezuelan people are going to make the right decision in 2018. I'm going to talk about late 2018 from the election. Maduro has now been in power since 2013. He took power after Hugo Chavez's death, and there was a special election called in April where Maduro barely won out, and it continued the Bolivarian Revolution for at least 5.5 more years. Chavez had just started his term when he died. His term started on January 10th, and he died on March 5th. That's another major thing that's happening in my administration is that Hugo Chavez died. I mean, it's been a pretty hectic 8 years, outside the United States. We had Chavez died. We had Kim Jong-il died. We had a lot happen, and we had some transfers of power around the world. I mean, we had the Polish president died. We had that plane crash. Putin regained the presidency. At first, he wasn't the president when Obama had been first inaugurated because of Medvedev. Medvedev took over in 2008 and was there for 4 years. And Putin took the position as prime minister for that short period. And then Putin now became as the president again. And now that's another thing, a big question mark for 2018 is whether Trump's going to see potentially the transfer of power in Russia, because there's a talk that Putin might not run in 2018 and that he might be retiring. That this is about it for Putin at 66 years old. He might have enough, and he might decide to give it to Shoigu, who might be the person that will take over the head of the United Russia, and he'll run and might become the president of Russia. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's really like who is the head of that party wins, because I don't think that they're going to elect the Communist Party of Russia that has not that much support in the Communist Party of Russia. I mean, these people are Stalinist. Stalinism in 21st century doesn't really get a lot of applause. So I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think Zyuganov is going to sneak in 2018 and somehow win the presidency. And I definitely don't think like somebody like Prokhorov or Kordovsky. Kordovsky said he's not even going to run anymore. Thank God. Kordovsky, the madman, who's pretty much thinks he's going to be at some point to be able to topple Putin, but it's not going to happen. Putin is going to be cautious with Trump. And that's how he's been with Obama. That's how he was with Bush. And he's actually had now this will be the fourth president he's seen since he took power in 1999. He saw Bill Clinton in power. He saw George W. Bush in power. He saw Barack Obama in power, and he's going to see Trump in power. And so now he started to learn how to deal with United States presidents, and is that he plays from a diplomatic approach, but he still opposes them. He does it, of course. He's talked out about the New World Order, but he does it in terms that are very academic. It's kind of like how JFK spoke. It's not for necessarily average person to be able to hear his words outright and understand them. but it's more for him to get it out there, and I think people to later interpret it themselves, or may have someone else interpret his words. Like, I think that the average person would be kind of lost, trying to listen to a Putin speech and trying to make sense of really what he's saying. But it's kind of clear when you start hearing the words that he uses about the unipolar world, and he starts talking about, how we can't have a central source of authority. Then he starts to then you start to realize that Putin's talking about the New World Order. Putin's talking about the West, and Putin knows about the New World Order. Putin also is not friendly with Israel. Is that Putin might try to act like he's diplomatic with Israel, but he definitely doesn't go to the extent the United States does, is bow down to Israel and give all this money to Israel. You might have said some kind words about Russia to Israel, but obviously the actions don't match up with it. Russia gives this S-300 systems to Iran. Putin still continues to aid his allies in the Middle East, even though that they are staunch enemies to Israel. And that's what Netanyahu and Putin obviously have this major standoff between each other. And Trump talks about how he's going to establish this relationship with Netanyahu, but at the same time, he's going to have this relationship with Putin. It's not going to work out. And he's going to pick Netanyahu in the end. Because Netanyahu's going to tell him that if he doesn't pick Netanyahu, then he's in serious trouble. And it seems like far-fetched. It seems like I'm talking like Netanyahu's this mob boss or whatever, but he's like the kind of is. And this syndicate that Israel's running, and they're using the United States as muscle. Israel's at a higher step than the United States. And I say that because you just have to look at the way that the United States caters to Israel. It's not the other way around. It's not like the United States has, or that Israel's an ally in the United States. It seems that the United States is an ally of Israel. Israel seems to be ones that are calling the shots, but ultimately the Rothschilds are calling the shots. But Israel seems to be at a higher status than the United States and Saudi Arabia. It's like there's that chart with ISIS, and it says ISIS boss, and it shows al-Baghdadi, and then it says ISIS boss's boss, and then it shows the Saudi king, and it says ISIS boss's boss's boss, and it shows Obama, and then it says ISIS boss's 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 boss, and it shows Netanyahu, and it says ISIS boss's 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 boss, and then it shows Jacob Rothschild. So that's how the chain of command goes. You can even put in there, somewhere along the chain of command, you can even throw in Erdogan and the Bahraini leader, who've been major pushers of the regime change in Syria, because that's what that's really about. That they're going to push regime change by supporting ISIS. ISIS is the major opposition group inside of Syria. Let's not forget that. Is that there's no moderate rebels. These moderate rebels are chopping people's heads off, crucifying Christians, using chemical weapons, and the media might call them moderate, but it's not a reality. And they've been caught with extremist groups such as Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and many others. There's so many different groups inside of Syria, but that's just a little short list of the different groups that the Free Syrian Army have been caught working with. And I've said this many different times, but Syrian rebels shouldn't be called the rebels; they're the terrorists. And the people of Syria seem to support the Bashar al-Assad government. Bashar al-Assad seems to be really liked inside of Syria, and for good reason. They see Assad as the man who has saved their country during this horrible onslaught by foreign powers against the people of Syria. Bashar al-Assad also did much progress in the country prior to the civil war, and he was there since 2000, and he did a lot to help fix the country, and his father did a lot to help fix the country. And there was an uprising against his father, and it ended up failing because of ultimately they couldn't match the will of the people against the Islamic terrorists that they had that were brought up in the 1980s. They had the Hama uprising. Syria has been a demonstration that the people will overcome a mass onslaught from foreign mercenaries, and that's what has happened. That these Free Syrian Army groups, the terrorists, are being all financed by the Western countries. So many Western countries, Bahrain, Qatar, Middle Eastern Gulf states. That's why I lump it to the Western countries. And the Obama legacy with Syria is going to be horrendous. And Obama's admitted he thinks that Libya is his biggest mistake, and it's true. Is that maybe the most horrendous thing he did was killing Gaddafi. Because killing Gaddafi was killing the hopes of many Africans, because they saw the potential of the gold dinar. They saw the potential of a united Africa, and he slashed it. He slashed their dreams. But now you have, with the African Union, has made not necessarily a dead project. And you have to remember that Libya, the dust hasn't been settled yet. And there's a lot of Gaddafi loyalists inside the country. There was a talk that they're re-emerging in 2016, and that was weird in 2017. I think that they're definitely, there's they say there's three different types of loyalists, and some that follow Gaddafi's son. There's the more orthodox Gaddafiist, and then there's these ones that follow this one general. Libya is starting to, the variety of the Gaddafis is starting to expand, and potentially soon one of these guys will be in power. And right now there is no real government that's in charge of Libya. You have just a General National Committee, and you have the Tobruk government, and they're both failures. Both sides have not been able to keep any kind of order inside the country. Here's the. I was looking earlier about that Trump article of him of apparently the breaking of the embargo by Donald Trump, and this is what they alleged against him. And this is out of the many things that were alleged about Trump. Of course, to me, this has absolutely not really any significance. But they said he broke the Cuban embargo in 1998. And it says, according to Newsweek's Kurt Eichenwald, Trump's resort business violated the embargo on Cuba in 1998 by spending almost $70,000 on research and the possibility of expansion there. If the embargo ended, a memo warned a Trump executive to shield his expenditure through a charity, which apparently never happened. A company controlled by Donald Trump, the Republican nominee for president, secretly conducted business in communist Cuba during Fidel Castro's presidency, despite strict American trade bans that made such undertakings illegal, according to interviews with former Trump executives, internal company records, and court filings. Documents show that the Trump company spent a minimum of $68,000 for this 1998 foray into Cuba at the time when the corporate expenditure of even a penny in the Cuban Caribbean country was prohibited without United States government approval, but the company did not spend the money directly, and it goes on and on and on about that. So, I find it interesting because of the very strong stance that Trump's taken against Castro. Remember when Trump said when Fidel died, he had this very tasteless comments about Fidel Castro, and of course, really showed that his lack of knowledge on the Cuban situation. And, there was all this criticism about what Trudeau said or whatnot. They said that he came off light, what he had to say about Fidel Castro and what Obama had to say about Fidel Castro. I really find it funny that people actually believe that Obama somehow sympathized with the communists or whatnot. When you see the very strong actions he's taken as the like the continuation of the tensions towards Cuba, or what's happened down in South America with other socialists, with Venezuela. So some could argue that's more. He seems to take a very strong stance against populist, against left-wing populist movements. With Chavez, with Ahmadinejad. I guess he's a type of left-wing populism. And we've got 50 minutes left in this show, and Obama. One of the major things that can't be ignored when talking about Obama is his legacy with East Ukraine. What this man has been responsible for with East Ukraine, and the fact is supporting the Kiev junta, that has killed a lot of ethnic Russians. This is a fascist regime that's being financed and armed by the United States. And it continues, but yet there doesn't seem to be much coverage about it on the media. But over there, the people in Ukraine definitely know how they feel about Obama, and it's not very good. It's not very good indeed. And and a lot of people know what's going on over there in East Ukraine. And people know how they feel over there. A lot of people around the world know how they feel, and the internet seems to have their own opinion. And my take on it is that it's a continuation of the Cold War policies of financing fascist regimes against Russia or communists, and now you have, for example, you have the fascist, you have the fascist regime in Kiev being propped up. You had during the 70s, Pinochet was propped up. You had Stroessner was propped up. You had, and I say against, that's the justification they use to finance these corrupt governments, is because they were against, in quotation, against the Soviet Union or whatnot. That's the reason why they financed them, is because they felt this was a way to counter-influence Soviet's influence around the world. And what ultimately happened is it ended up financing these disgusting regimes that killed millions of people. And as well, it also it also has created. One of the reasons why a lot of the world doesn't like Americans is because of that. Is that they remember the legacy of what the United States foreign policy did for their country. And it's not very good. What it did to Chile, what it did to Paraguay, what it did to Bolivia, what it did to Venezuela. Carlos Andrés Perez is a brutal dictator that cracked down heavily during the Carazaco, but there seems to be an inconvenient fact that they like to ignore in the media. We'll talk about Hugo Chavez and talk about what did and talk about, supposedly they try to say that the Venezuelan government did human rights abuses. They ignore what the right-wing regime did of human rights abuses, and you forget
that Hugo Chavez did many things for the progress of the people, and he reversed a lot of the things that right-wing regime did. Carlos Andrés Perez was a horrible dictator. So was Stroessner. So was Pinochet. So was Guaido. So was many different ones across Latin America. And I don't know the names of all of them, but I know the types of governments that were there. Bolivia, Uruguay. I mean, Uruguay threw Mujica in prison for 35 years during that dictatorship. And Colombia, that still continues, and you still have a government that defends the paramilitaries. These paramilitaries are death squads that kill left-wing dissidents and do a lot of the dirty work that the Colombian government doesn't want to do. The Colombian government supports them. The paramilitaries. Remember that that's kind of like how the SF came about, is that it was a paramilitary that was allowed to build under Weimar Germany, and eventually ended up becoming the organization that was infamous under Nazi Germany. Was, talk about the SS, it's just a paramilitary organization, and that's like the paramilitary organizations that exist in Colombia today. And Uribe have a lot of connections to these paramilitary organizations, and they still allow him to even participate in politics. You think that by now Uribe would be in jail, or that he'd be at least being forced to answer some questions. The Colombian people have a lot of them when it comes to Uribe and why he did what he did during the Colombian presidency. I would say that Uribe, in many ways is like a Colombian chum. When it comes to that, he's a really hated figure there, and he's like the ugly face of their political establishment. And it's like Obama is like the kinder face to the establishment here in the United States. It's like Santos is in Colombia, because Santos is like the kinder face of the imperialism. And I think that in a way, by imperialism poking its ugly head out and showing its ugly face in the next few years, I think it's going to embolden the left-wing movement inside of South America. And I think it's going to cause countries like Colombia turn towards a left-wing candidate. And I think that Paraguay is going to reevaluate its mistakes in 2013 or 2012, and I think that they might end up, getting rid of Horacio Cartes, and I think that they're also going to finally look towards I think in Argentina, they're going to look towards getting rid of Macri, as they see this man. They see how corrupt he is, and he's already been faced with so much opposition already. But I think Macri we're going to see his removal in the Trump administration. I think that we're going to see a resurgence of Pink Tide in 2016, or not 2016, 2017, in the coming years. And I think by 2020 or 2025, we're going to see possibly the UNISOR project be ready to come back into full swing again. And potentially this time, it will be every country in South America will be on board, rather than a few countries that, at one point, it was all but two countries in South America were on Pink Tide, but now a few countries are no longer part of it. You don't have Argentina part of it anymore. You don't have you don't have Brazil part of it anymore. Rousseff was removed by parliamentary coup, and Macri was brought about in the election, and in Paraguay, another parliamentary coup removed Fernando Lugo. Peru was an election. Colombia has always been not part of it, and that's your five. It's 5 countries now are outside of it. You still have Uruguay, who right now is with Vasquez, which is, it might not be quite the same character as Mujica, but he's still definitely better than the right-wing opposition. And you have in Chile, Bachelet, who again might not be the strongest opposer of the right-wing's policies, but then again, it's better than the right-wing opposition. And then you still have the very principled Morales, Korea, in those countries who still continue to fight for the Bolivian cause. And also you have, of course, Maduro instead of Venezuela, who will still continue. He's somewhat of a face of the left-wing movement in South America. But, in the ways it's starting to shift, I would say. And it's no longer just it's no longer really necessarily the president of Venezuela, but rather more starting to go to or people are definitely looking more towards Ecuador with Correa, or in Bolivia with Morales. Instead of President of Venezuela, you have Correa and Morales. Of course, I think that Trump's strong rhetoric is definitely going to embolden these countries, and there's going to be a surge of anti-American sentiment in these countries. I think people are going to be actually kind of shocked when they see the reaction down there, and that Trump thinks that maybe he can bully his way towards towards the South America that listens to him. I don't think it's going to work. And I think potentially Mexico will also go towards the left. I mean, they have an election in 2018. I saw an indigenous woman is wanting to run in 2018. And also there's the talks, of course, Obrador could run again for Mexico. Obrador his election has been ripped away from quite an election in 2012. Obrador lost. There was Felipe Calderon he lost to, and then he lost to Peña Nieto. Which Peña Nieto was practically acting like a dictator. You had the Ayotzinapa scandal, and you have the extreme corruption that's being shown now. Now I think that with that, there's a lot more chance that people will vote for Obrador in overwhelming numbers this time. And Andres Lopez Obrador, he's the one that ran in 2006, ran in 2012. He switched parties actually, and it looks to be in a smaller party, and still like a Democratic Socialist Party that he belongs to. He used to be way back when the PRA used to really dominate the policies. He used to be part of PRA, which is currently the ruling party with Peña Nieto as president. But now he left the PRA in 1988. He went to PRD, which is more of a left-wing party, but I think it's kind of moderated, I guess, over the last few years. I'm guessing that's why he joined this new party. But yeah, he had the election ripped out of his hands twice. And that's another thing that's happened is that we've seen a transfer of power twice on our borders with Obama as the president. We've seen Calderon become Peña Nieto. We saw Harper become Trudeau. And Harper was a complete corrupt scumbag that was the Canadian Prime Minister for a few years, and we saw he was part of a big crackdown on pot in the country. He was part of a massive shift towards the right in this country. I would say with a lot of the people, I think their mentality changed a little bit. But also is that during his presidency, Canada was very strong allies with the United States. and we saw that the military of Canada helped the United States and Ukraine, and just do a lot of the ugly things of the United States foreign policy, and they still do with Trudeau. Is that despite Trudeau kind of talks about of not being for that, Trudeau ended up doing just that. Last year there was like all this talk after Canada got the prime minister that they're saying, it's like, oh, look, he's going to legalize pot and he's getting people out of worse. Wow, he's going to be a great prime minister. Now it's quickly ended, and the honeymoon between Trudeau and Canada has ended, and people saw the real value of Trudeau. And he's just like his father, another one of the establishment. Pierre Trudeau was his father, which was the Canadian prime minister back in the 80s. One thing about was perhaps a statement when it came to Fidel Castro and when he died, which I think it might have just been diplomacy. And I think that people oftentimes, when they see kind words between, perhaps someone that's outside of the establishment and, somebody that's currently in the establishment, just remember it's diplomacy that we're witnessing. We're seeing a lot of times, for example, Trump and Putin. I think that Trump might be doing diplomacy, and it's kind of just a thing to trick Putin into a potentially sign some kind of that be beneficial for him or whatnot. There's talk like, that if he does a nuclear reduction deal, that he'll drop sanctions on them or whatnot, or he'll consider dropping sanctions on. So he's considering a deal that if he signs a nuclear reduction, he gets the sanctions dropped on him. That said, or that he'll consider it, which I guess is further than Obama, that he pretty much had this hardline stance that he'll never drop the sanctions on Russia. He's saying that if they sign the nuclear deterrent deal, he's considering if they sign a nuclear deterrent deal that he will consider the sanctions being dropped. While and Obama never even had any bit of a leaning towards that during his administration. I saw one of these search results. I saw about the Mexican president, the guy that ran for Mexican president. It said 2018. So I guess there must be talk that he's running in 2018. There's a lot of support behind him down there. It would be kind of nice to see him in comparison to this corrupt man, Peña Nieto, that's been the president down there. And it's really disgusting to see Univision defend the corruption inside of Mexico, the alleged corruption in Venezuela. And they get so furious about this things that their government has done in order to back away from United States influence, but then they defend these United States ass kissers that are the Mexican government. Univision's terrible. The one thing me and Trump could agree on is that Univision sucks. You remember? I remember the incident. He got involved with with Jorge Ramos, and he was in that conference or whatnot, and Jorge Ramos is trying to ask him the question, and he's telling him to sit down. That was like a big incident. I think that's part of the reason is that the media says that they were no part of Trump and that they don't like Trump or whatnot, but ultimately they gave Trump a shit ton of airtime, and that he's been able to push his message to the people using all this airtime that the media gave him. I think in a way is that by the media playing like they were against it, so they don't give him airtime. Look to Mike Gravel, for example, 2008. Is that they just try to make him seem like a really obscure candidate, and he fell out of the race. But he he really was speaking the real deal back in. Mike Gravel is look up at the YouTube videos of him in the debate where him and Brock, you could tell he's the real outsider candidate. He's the one that's legitimate. And Mike Gravel in that debate, all the way, that was back in 2008, him versus Obama. There's Biden there, Clinton there. So you can see three of the faces of the administration. And, he's talking about the, no options off the table. Barack Obama, you could see Mike Gravel saying, "Who are you going to nuke?" Of course, Barack Obama, I'm not going to nuke anyone. But Gravel pushed on. Gravel said some very powerful statements about Iraq. He's talked about that it's time for us to get out. Talk about that these people died in vain. He says, what's worse than soldiers dying in vain? Even more soldiers dying in vain. And he said that all the soldiers of Vietnam died in vain. Mike Gravel was a very powerful candidate. And people talking about Bernie Sanders or whatnot, but Bernie Sanders never really spoke as harshly about the United States foreign policy as Mike Gravel did. And Mike Gravel has also done things like went to Iran for a conference about Hollywoodism, talk about the Zionist influence in Hollywood. Mike Gravel has done a very good job at walking the walk. I like him. I wish that if he would have ran in 2016, not to win. I know they wouldn't win, but just to really show people what a real candidate looks like. But he's pretty old now, and I don't think he's going to run in 2020. He'll be like 90 years old in 2020. He was actually older than Bernie Sanders in 2008. He'll be turning 87 on May 13th. I actually knew about Mike Gravel a little bit back. He's in that Payday Monsanto song, The Complex. That's him talking at the beginning, talking about we don't have any important. It's time to start treating the rest of the world as equals. He was a senator for Alaska starting in 1968, and he was known for wanted to end the draft during Vietnam, and he put the Pentagon Papers in the public record in 1971. And even tried to become the vice president in 1970. He was one to win the Democratic nomination in 1972 for vice president, and then kind of came back in 2006. Wanted to be the Democratic nomination. Try to get the Democratic nomination for president. And speaking about about him is that I actually have him as a Facebook friend. I added him a little bit while back. I sent him a friend request way back, and he actually accepted it. I was like, oh wow, that is so cool, because he's like the Democratic version of Ron Paul or something. Ron Paul, was the 2012 version of the Mike Gravel campaign of 2008, and you saw how that ended up. Is that despite the fact that he probably had the support, people really liked Ron Paul in 2012. There was a lot of support for Ron Paul. Somehow Romney was able to pull out that nomination. Romney, Gingrich and Santorum, supposedly were in front of Ron Paul. And I know the support for, the support for Santorum and Gingrich was pretty low. And Romney, there was some support for him, but And I think I don't know if there's support from him. The media act like there's support from him. They kind of paint him as the moderate. He was the more, as you could say, maybe liberal conservative. And then later, later Romney won the nomination. It was the general election between, was very little differences between Romney and Obama. The 2012 election was one of the most similar candidates. It wasn't like, it didn't quite make the division, I guess you could say, as the 2016 election, where you had these candidates that I guess you could say came off as very different, Hillary and Trump, to the average American, but to me they came off very similar. To me, Hillary and Donald Trump, I saw them as just both faces of the establishment, both actors of the establishment, in order to do the thing that they call the general election, and they decided to go with Trump and not Clinton. That's what surprised me. I thought that Trump would be the one that was designated to lose, that at the end they would bring about all the silly shit that he did throughout the campaign, and at the end they'd select Hillary. And then we had Trump ended up winning the election. Trump got a ton of support from people. The minute they realized that Trump could maybe bring some of the enthusiasm back for the United States government. I think it has done a little bit of that. Is that people are so tired of the status quo that they bring in something that they at least believe is not the status quo, even if it is the status quo, and that would be enough for them to continue to keep some hope in them about the United States government. And we are at we got about 20-something minutes left in the show. And talking about Obama and, his reputation is that over the last 4 years, I think really his reputation started to sour. People got tired of him as they realized the hope and change wasn't really coming, and that as the years went by, 2013 really dropped. The NSA scandal, you had the continuing of the fallout with relations to Russia. I think it started to wear on Americans. Americans really dig the idea of the return of a Cold War between countries. I don't think that Americans really dig the idea of their every move on the internet being spied on. And it's not an exaggeration to every move. Every country spied on by the NSA. They have so much space. They have so many reporting. NSA a month. Spawned off in fascist state, where these ultimately it seems like something from a sci-fi movie. The NSA, that the government has this building where they hold so much recordings of people, their phone calls, their Facebook posts, or whatnot, and every move that you take, the NSA is watching it. The NSA is watching this show. They're listening to this show, and it's not just buzzwords. It's a wide-scoping view on the internet. But the best thing we can do is use that thing, the internet, against them and expose what they're doing. It may perhaps make people angry enough to do something about it. Just make people, go out and protest, go out and demand change. That's what I hope. That I'll see next few years, that may people come will have enough discontent in them in order for them to do something about it. Because we as Americans, but I think that ultimately we're about to go into very long. I don't think it'll be very long at all. Because we don't think we're going to go very long into a Trump presidency without, just and we're being leaned into it. It's not like a martial law was to have happened 10 years ago. I think that we would have been shocked by it. But now that we've been desensitized to the wide-scoping reach of the United States government, that if it was happened now, we wouldn't really notice it because we've already been exposed to a military, exposed to so much that at this point, we would. It just seemed like something normal. It just seemed like they just advanced it a little bit compared to if we were seeing it 50 years ago when it was still days like the Lou Rockwell paintings with the portrayal of the police still as the as still the community servant, just looking out to help the community. Now it's something different. Now it's something of an enforcer of the law. It's somebody it's a corporate revenue officer. That's one way to call them. That's what the police have turned into. The police have turned into, as we've seen inside of Ferguson, inside of Baltimore, is that they've turned individuals that and they'll go to these extreme methods in order to assert their authority. I mean, instead of Baltimore, you had Freddie Gray was tortured inside that van for 2 hours. They broke his spine and then they ended up killing him. Freddie Gray it was horrific what happened in Baltimore. I think actually they broke his spine. They tortured him, broke his spine, then he had to wait for 2 hours, and he died. And Freddie Gray was just one of the many examples, and it's not just black men; it's also white men. There's been a few instances of white men. There was the one with Kelly Thomas, was the one where he was beat up by the police, and also you had. Let's never forget what happened with that one guy in Minnesota that it was mentally challenged, or he had mental issues, and ended up getting killed in wheelchair. Got out of I think he was wielding a knife. The thing is that police can't handle a man wielding a knife without using their guns. Then they have poor training. And I think that a lot of these cases, just having backup, or practical solutions, you have backup. You have one guy do one thing, another guy to come down, then that's works much better than using their guns every time that they have any kind of situation. I was thinking that's a little humorous. Yeah, well, I'd make the situation from the Jersey Shore train him. And it's just like, yeah, bro, situation, any kind of situation, bro. He's going to show you how to handle this situation. I don't know. I've had made enough thinking about the horrors of what this country went to when it comes to what we've allowed with our police, and it's disgusting. I see even young people defending what these certain cops have done. I'm not talking about all cops. There's definitely good cops out there, but this guy, these guys, not Darren Wilson, the people that did what they did to Freddie Gray, and yes, a couple of them are black. It's definitely not a race thing. It's a state versus the people thing, and they want to make it seem like the race thing. It's like even, and I see them with incidents, for example, where a man obviously does something very clearly against somebody, and then he gets shot, and then they say, well, the race thing, because he was black and the homeowner was white. They push that narrative on anything practically that they can. Is that if they can push the narrative of race, then they will. And obviously, the media is racist at the same time race baiters. They pretend like that they are for total racial equality, but they just race bait, and they use race for their agenda. Here's an example of how they're not. Think about how the United States government. Think about how they are or how the media is, or how the United States government supports Israel and the racist policies that are supported there. And the media oftentimes defends the same myths that Israel pushes, which are based on racist lies. For example, that the Palestinians are automatically a violent and warlike people, or that the Arabs in general, Israel likes to paint out the entire Middle East to be the same practically. They like to paint out, to make it seem like every country from Jordan to Iran is the same. It's not. Countries actually are under Israel's pocketbook. Israel has most of the Middle East in their pocketbook, but yet they're going to act like most of the Middle East is against them. Only really 3 countries are not. That's Yemen, Syria, and Iran are not in Israel's pocketbook. And I would say that Yemen, they're only the parts are part of the country controlled by the Houthis, and the Houthis control the important part. But still, a lot of countries controlled by the Aden government. If I had $1 for every time that somebody said, you don't like Obama, you're probably racist, then I think it's kind of rich. I've gotten that before. Is that my criticism, calling Obama fascist? I wouldn't think that's great, or it was implied. I think a lot of people here that listen to my show have been called names or whatnot, or have been accused of being something that they're not. Obviously, the ad hominem attack. It's not an ad hominem attack, but it's definitely a false attack to say, that not supporting Obama equals being a racist. Because what Obama did was betray the black community. What Obama did was, when it comes to his legacy with the black community, it's not going to be very good. And he looked the other way on what happened in Baltimore, what happened in Ferguson. And another thing that Obama did is that he literally funded neo-Nazis in Ukraine. It's like, what kind of supposed fighter for black people would support neo-Nazis anywhere? Even if they're not in the United States, they're still over in Ukraine. Somebody that really truly fought for Africa was Muammar Gaddafi. And this is the man that Obama painted as a villain, and is also a man that Obama had killed. Obama also was in favor from the very start, which was a fabricated movement. People like Gaddafi, and look at these protests. They were Arab Spring was supported over in Egypt. Now, with Mubarak, he was supported by the United States. However, he brought about another pro-United States leader after, which was Mohamed Morsi, who later quickly, Mohamed Morsi became unliked by the people inside of Egypt when they realized what had happened, and is that they threw out one American leader and then they got another American leader. Even if you read the Wikipedia article on Gaddafi, it's so biased. And that's how the media's coverage of Gaddafi was so biased. It was complete and utter. It was complete and utter dribble. A lot of it, to try to act like that there was a massive extremist element inside the Libyan opposition, and they try to make it seem like this is just a overwhelmingly, moderate group, when it was almost all terrorists, the Libyan opposition, or these people. A lot of them were gullible, just that just thought that, they actually fell for the American dream or whatnot. Gaddafi, and also remember, Gaddafi had already left Tripoli, and was hiding out in a few. There was only a few cities that were pro Gaddafi, and Obama oversaw that all the way to the point where they had him killed. And then the way that he was killed too was disgraceful. And Gaddafi returned to his hometown in, after August of 2011. Then he hanged out in October 20th, 2011. He hanged out inside of his hometown Sirte, and that's when he was killed. Obama oversaw that. But one thing that should be noted about that is that the people that killed him, Gaddafi sympathizers, wounded one of the people who captured Gaddafi, or fatally wounded one that captured Gaddafi, Omran Shaban, near Bani Walid, September 2012. That was a mouthful. Say that a bunch of times. Is that Omran Shaban near Bani Walid, September 10th, 2012. Omran Shaban near Bani Walid, September 2012. That's I mean, Arabic's definitely much different than English, so trying to say some of their words or some of their names is going to come off as some of a challenge. I'm not criticizing their language, but it definitely seems like a fun experience trying to learn that. Obama now, we're looking into we're now finally in the last 5 days, and he, one of the last things he did was declare Venezuela a national security threat once again. After multiple coup attempts that the United States has done against Venezuela, who's the security threat to each other? I would say that the United States is a security threat to Venezuela for trying to sabotage them multiple times. There's been sabotage attempts. There's been coups. There was the coup in 2002. There was the attempted coup in 2015. And there's a continuation of attempts towards sabotage going on to 2017. These are the ones that have really shown themselves to be a adversary to the other one, and that's going to be the United States. Venezuela has been really a country that's actually, I mean, they've shown some restraint. It's kept the rhetoric. But of course, they know that they can't take any action against the United States because it's practically annihilating that country. That if in the United States, that's something I do worry about during the Trump administration, is that the United States might attempt to invade. Might attempt to invade Venezuela during the next few years, as Trump has taken a very strong opinion on it. That Obama declared Venezuela a national security threat once again. They were declared that in 2015, 2016, but there was also sanctions attached to that. This is what the United States declared national security threats on Friday, along with Iran, Libya, Ukraine, Zimbabwe, a country that Washington supports terrorism. The declarations effectively extend for another year economic sanctions already in place. So when it comes to Ukraine, they support the West Ukrainian government. I'm guessing they're just talking about that because there's the ongoing crisis in the country. In Libya, I'm guessing they're talking about also the ongoing crisis in the country. And Obama used an executive order on March 2015 to declare the situation in Venezuela had not improved. He said there was human rights violations, persecution of political dissenters, and restriction of freedom of press. And there also was sanctions against 7 Venezuelan officials. They couldn't travel to the United States. All their assets and properties belonging to them would be frozen. And there was an extension of the United States. So the extension of the United States sanctions against Iran come despite the historic agreement reached last year between the two countries. The extension of sanctions against Russia imposed in response to their actions in Ukraine and Crimea come amidst hysteria about suspected interference in the United States election by the Putin regime. But the United States currently has 31 official declared national emergencies. Yeah, and this is despite, the supposed opening up of, that's what Obama is going to be known for, is that he pretends like he's opening up to whatever country, and then he ends up doing something quite the opposite, like putting sanctions in that country. That's what he's done multiple times. He's really shown them two-faced when it comes to dealing with various countries throughout the region, and Latin America really is not going to like Obama. Obama's legacy all across the world is going to be kind of similar, is that he was not a man of his word. He was a man of that ultimately did the bidding of the big bankers and people really in charge of the United States. Obama really really lost a lot of his initial support inside the United States. This is a man that used to enjoy support of 40 or the 50% easily. Now it's down like 20 to 30%. His approval ratings have went way down, and they're going to try to paint right down the media. Like the History Channel played some kind of a special tonight about Obama, saying that the president, in his own words, are trying to paint him out to be this extraordinary human being, and it's obviously a propaganda piece. It's obviously a last-ditch attempt to try to repaint the image of this puppet. And now Trump's coming up to be president, and I can imagine that the honeymoon between the United States and Trump's going to wear off. But with all one thing we could say about the legacy of Obama is that a lot of shit's happened overseas. We had wars, we've had the coups, we've had we've had what happened in South America throughout the last few years. We've had big protests in Guatemala a few years ago. Talk about Latin America. A lot of things have went down across Latin America. We've seen Fidel Castro die. So we've seen 2 power changes at our borders, and we've seen Fidel Castro die. We saw across Europe, over there, and we've seen the migrant crisis has been another thing. But anyways, we're through the Voice of Rebellion Radio. Next week, I'll be back here same time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, January 22nd. Definitely subscribe to my Facebook page if you haven't already, Chris Jackson Rojas. I say subscribe or actually follow or subscribe. Really, what's the difference in use the term? I'll say subscribe. Chris Jackson Rojas, that's my Facebook page. And if you haven't, if you have a way to contact me on Facebook, whatever, you can always ask me for my Snapchat. That's kind of my non-political thing I do. So you don't really expect anything there. That I have to have like one social media that's not political, just for like the coworkers and shit. But anyways, we're about to hit the bumpers here, and definitely, or what we can say about Obama, corporate fascist puppet.
That's the point of no return, and nobody can stop. stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple. Al-Aqsa, the name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I back down now, then